The night everything changed, Jade Martinez smoothed the emerald fabric of her vintage-inspired dress, taking in the opulent grandeur of the Riverside Hotel's Diamond Ballroom. The annual Harbor Children's Foundation Gala attracted the city's wealthiest philanthropists, and Jade felt slightly out of place among women dripping in jewels and men whose watches cost more than her entire boutique's monthly rent. She had received her invitation only because her sustainable fashion boutique, Threads of Hope, had provided complimentary alterations for the Foundation's staff uniforms throughout the year. Before we begin, I kindly request that you please subscribe to my channel. Now, please share in the comments where you're watching from. The ballroom glittered with excessive elegance. Ice sculptures depicting children at play stood sentinel at each corner, while servers in crisp white uniforms glided between clusters of guests carrying trays of champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played softly from an elevated platform, their classical melodies barely audible above the murmur of conversation and clinking crystal glasses. Jade had attended hoping to make connections that might help her expand her business's charitable programs, not to draw attention to herself. The spark that ignited everything that plan evaporated the moment Jade witnessed the scene near the silent auction tables. A young server, barely into her 20s, stood frozen with terror as a tall man in an immaculately tailored navy suit towered over her. Red wine stained the cuff of his crisp white shirt, spreading like blood across expensive fabric. The girl's tray trembled in her hands, tears threatening to spill from her wide, frightened eyes. "This is absolutely unacceptable," the man said, his voice cold and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. "Do you have any idea how much this shirt costs? More than you make in a month, I'd wager." He gestured sharply at the stain. "Your carelessness reflects poorly on this establishment. Perhaps you should consider whether you possess the competence required for this position." The girl stammered an apology, her voice barely a whisper. "Sir, I'm so sorry. Someone bumped into me, and I lost my balance. Please, I can get club soda. I don't want excuses," the man interrupted, his steel blue eyes devoid of warmth. "I want staff who can perform basic tasks without destroying my property." Jade's grandmother had immigrated from Mexico and worked 3 cleaning jobs to support her family, enduring similar treatment from people who believed money entitled them to cruelty. That memory ignited something fierce in Jade's chest. She found herself moving before conscious thought caught up with her actions. "Standing against power." "Excuse me," Jade said loudly, cutting through the confrontation as she positioned herself between the trembling server and the imposing businessman. "I couldn't help but overhear your incredibly gracious response to an obvious accident." The man's attention snapped to Jade, his perfectly sculpted eyebrows rising in surprise. He was handsome in the way that sculptors captured Greek gods, all sharp angles and aristocratic features, but his expression radiated the kind of arrogance that made Jade's blood boil. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" His tone suggested she had made a grave error in addressing him. "No, but I recognize your type immediately," Jade replied, crossing her arms and meeting his gaze without flinching. "The type who believes their bank account gives them permission to treat hardworking people like disposable objects. The type who's never worked a service job and can't comprehend that accidents happen to everyone, regardless of how expensive their wardrobe is." A ripple of shocked whispers spread through the nearby crowd. Phones appeared as guests sensed drama more entertaining than the scheduled entertainment. The man's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath his tan skin. "Miss, this doesn't concern you. I suggest you return to your table before you embarrass yourself further." "The only embarrassment here is your behavior," Jade shot back, her voice steady despite her racing heart. This young woman apologized sincerely. A decent human being would have accepted gracefully and moved on. Instead, you're trying to make her feel worthless over wine that will wash out with basic stain treatment. The server behind Jade whispered a shaky thank you before disappearing into the crowd. Jade didn't retreat, even as she became acutely aware that the entire ballroom had fallen silent, all eyes fixed on their confrontation. The string quartet had stopped playing, and even the servers had paused their rounds to watch. "The billionaire's identity revealed you're very brave," the man said slowly, studying Jade's face with unsettling intensity. "Or very foolish. Most people in this room wouldn't dare speak to me this way." "Then most people in this room have forgotten what truly matters," Jade replied firmly. "Money doesn't make you better than anyone else. It just makes you louder and apparently more comfortable being cruel in public." Someone in the crowd gasped. "That's Vincent Blackwell," a woman whispered loudly enough for Jade to hear. "The Vincent Blackwell. He owns Blackwell Industries." Jade felt her stomach drop as recognition dawned. Vincent Blackwell's name appeared regularly in business sections and society pages. He owned commercial properties throughout the region, his real estate empire valued in the billions. His face graced magazine covers with headlines about ruthless business tactics and unprecedented success. She had just publicly humiliated one of the most powerful men in the state. But Jade refused to back down, even as fear crept up her spine. "Vincent Blackwell," she said, lifting her chin. "Well, Mr. Blackwell, I hope your business success brings you more satisfaction than basic human kindness apparently does." For a long moment, Vincent said nothing. His blue eyes locked onto Jade's, and something flickered in their depths, something she couldn't quite identify. Anger, certainly, but also something else. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of Vincent's mouth lifted, in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Jade hesitated, wondering if she was signing her own professional death warrant. But she had come too far to retreat now. "Jade Martinez. I own Threads of Hope, a sustainable fashion boutique in the Arts District." "Jade Martinez," Vincent repeated thoughtfully, as if committing it to memory. "The woman who lectures billionaires at charity events." How refreshingly audacious. Before Jade could respond, Vincent reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a sleek black business card. He offered it to her with a slight, almost mocking bow. "Ms. Martinez, this evening has proven far more educational than I anticipated. Perhaps we could continue this fascinating conversation in a less public venue. I'd enjoy hearing more of your opinions on wealth and character." Jade stared at the card, but made no move to take it. "I think I've made my opinions sufficiently clear, Mr. Blackwell. Have you?" Vincent placed the card on the auction table beside them. "I disagree. You've made accusations. I'd like the opportunity to defend myself, or perhaps to prove you wrong." His eyes held a challenge that sent an unexpected shiver down Jade's spine. "The aftermath with that." Vincent nodded politely to the stunned crowd and walked away, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor. The moment he disappeared, the ballroom erupted in excited chatter. Phones buzzed as guests texted furiously, no doubt spreading news of the confrontation across social media. Jade stood alone in the center of attention, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes evaluating her. Some guests smiled approvingly, clearly delighted to witness someone challenge the notoriously intimidating businessman. Others looked scandalized, as if Jade had committed social suicide. She looked down at the business card Vincent had left behind. Elegant silver lettering embossed on matte black stock proclaimed his name, and a single phone number. No company name, no title, just the essentials. Like everything about Vincent Blackwell, it exuded confidence and power. As Jade slipped the card into her clutch, more out of shock than intention, she wondered what she had just unleashed. She had attended the gala hoping for a quiet evening supporting a good cause. Instead, she had picked a fight with one of the city's most influential men in front of hundreds of witnesses. The question now was what would happen next. And despite her racing heart and the whispers surrounding her, Jade couldn't quite suppress the spark of curiosity burning in her chest about what Vincent Blackwell's next move would be. When power meets pride 3 days after the gala, Jade tried to pretend her life hadn't been turned upside down. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Threads of Hope, illuminating racks of carefully curated vintage pieces and her own sustainable fashion designs. The familiar scent of lavender sachets she tucked between garments usually brought comfort, but today it did little to calm her nerves. Her phone had been relentless. Local lifestyle bloggers wanted interviews. A gossip columnist from the city's premier magazine had called twice. Even the morning news had mentioned the confrontation, dubbing it the Gala Showdown. Grainy footage from someone's phone had gone viral, accumulating thousands of views and comments ranging from supportive to harsh criticism for disrespecting wealth and success. Jade's best friend and assistant, Nina Chen, had been fielding calls all morning while Jade tried to focus on alterations for a bride's vintage lace gown. But concentration proved impossible when every notification brought another reminder of that night. "Jade, you need to see this," Nina said, her voice carrying an odd mixture of concern and excitement. She held up her tablet, showing the boutique's Instagram page. "We've gained 3,000 followers since Saturday night. People are calling you a hero for standing up to Blackwell, or they're calling me reckless and naive," Jade countered, threading her needle with shaking hands. "I saw the comments comparing me to David fighting Goliath, except Goliath owns half the city and has lawyers on speed dial." Before Nina could respond, the boutique's door chimed. Both women looked up, and Jade's breath caught in her throat. Vincent Blackwell stood in the doorway, looking starkly out of place among the flowing fabrics and vintage mannequins. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Jade's monthly mortgage, his presence somehow making the spacious boutique feel suddenly cramped. "We're open," Jade managed, setting down her sewing. "Though I'm surprised to see you here, Mr. Blackwell." Nina grabbed her purse with suspicious speed. "I just remembered I have that appointment with the fabric supplier. I'll be back in an hour." She practically fled, leaving Jade alone with the man she had publicly humiliated. Vincent moved through the boutique with measured steps, his fingers trailing across a rack of restored 1950s dresses. "This is impressive," he said genuinely. "You restore vintage pieces and create original designs using sustainable materials." "Nina filled me in while you were in the back. You spoke with Nina." Jade felt a flash of betrayal, then realized her friend had probably been too starstruck to resist. Briefly, "She's very loyal to you." Vincent turned to face her fully. "Ms. Martinez, I came to apologize." The unexpected apology. Jade blinked, certain she had misheard. "You came to apologize for my behavior at the gala," Vincent continued, his blue eyes surprisingly earnest. "You were right. I was cruel to that server, a young woman named Claire, as I discovered when I tracked her down to apologize personally. She's working 3 jobs to support her younger siblings after their parents passed away in an accident." Jade's defensive posture softened slightly. "You apologized to her." "I did more than apologize. I've established a scholarship fund in her family's name and ensured she received tuition support through my foundation." Vincent stepped closer. "I also spent considerable time reflecting on what you said about money, making me better than anyone else. Why does my opinion matter?" Jade asked bluntly. "You don't know me. I'm just someone who called you out at a party." Vincent was quiet for a moment, his expression more vulnerable than Jade had seen. "Because in 36 years, you're the first person who saw past the fortune and challenged me on my character. Everyone else either wants something from me or is too intimidated to tell me the truth. Maybe that's because you surround yourself with people who benefit from staying silent," Jade suggested. Though her tone had lost its sharp edge, "Undoubtedly," Vincent agreed, "which is why your honesty was so jarring and so valuable. You had nothing to gain and potentially everything to lose by confronting me. That kind of integrity is rare." Jade studied his face, searching for signs of manipulation or a hidden agenda, but his expression seemed genuinely remorseful. "What do you want from me, Mr. Blackwell?" "Vincent, please. And I want the chance to prove I'm not the villain you believe me to be." He pulled out his phone, scrolling briefly before showing her the screen. "I also wanted to warn you about this." Jade's blood ran cold as she read the email Vincent displayed. It was from her fabric supplier, the small family-owned company she had worked with for 3 years. They were terminating their contract, citing restructuring priorities and alignment with larger commercial interests. The hidden threat. "When did you receive this?" Vincent asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. This morning, Jade admitted, her mind racing through the implications. I've been trying to reach them all day, but nobody's returning my calls. She looked up at Vincent suspiciously. Did you have something to do with this? Absolutely not, Vincent said firmly. But I know who did. My business partner, Gregory Hammond, has taken it upon himself to protect my interests by putting pressure on your suppliers. He sent this. Vincent showed her another message. This one from Hammond detailing how he had contacted several of Jade's vendors, suggesting that working with her might jeopardize their relationships with Blackwell Industries. Jade felt her legs weaken. He can do that. Just destroy my business because I embarrassed you. He shouldn't be able to. And he won't. Vincent's jaw tightened. Give me 1 hour. I'll fix this. Why would you help me? Jade asked, hating the desperation in her voice. Because it's unconscionable. And because I meant what I said about being better. Vincent was already dialing. Also, because your confrontation taught me something important. Power without accountability becomes tyranny. I've let people like Hammond operate in my name for too long. The knight in designer armor Jade watched in astonishment as Vincent made call after call, his voice alternating between cold authority and persuasive charm. He didn't just restore her supplier contract, he personally guaranteed better terms and pricing than she had ever received. He called Gregory Hammond directly, and though Jade could only hear one side of the conversation, Vincent's icy fury was palpable. If you ever use my company to punish someone for exercising free speech again, you'll be looking for new employment, Vincent said into the phone. Ms. Martinez is off limits to any retaliation, business interference, or harassment. Spread that message through every department and every subsidiary. Are we clear? When Vincent finally hung up, nearly 90 minutes had passed. Jade had made tea, and they sat in her boutique small seating area, surrounded by the afternoon's golden light filtering through vintage lace curtains. I don't know how to thank you, Jade said quietly. Don't thank me, Vincent replied. This shouldn't have happened in the first place. I've built an empire, but I'd been negligent about the culture I've allowed to flourish within it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Vincent spoke again. May I ask you something personal? You just saved my business. I suppose I owe you at least one answer. Why fashion? Why sustainability? Vincent's curiosity seemed genuine. Jade smiled, relaxing for the first time since he had entered her boutique. My grandmother taught me to sew. She came to this country with nothing, and she made everything beautiful from scraps and second-hand finds. She showed me that creativity and resourcefulness matter more than money. When I started this boutique, I wanted to honor her legacy while also addressing fashion's environmental impact. She sounds remarkable, Vincent said softly. She was. She also taught me to stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. Jade met Vincent's eyes. That's why I confronted you at the gala. I kept thinking about her, about all the times people treated her as less than human because she cleaned their offices. Vincent nodded slowly. My grandfather started our family business with a single property and an unshakable work ethic. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that success should amplify compassion, not eliminate it. The shift over the following weeks, Vincent became a regular presence at Threads of Hope. He would arrive without warning, sometimes with coffee from the shop next door, other times with questions about sustainable business practices or Jade's design process. Their conversations ranged from heated debates about corporate responsibility to comfortable silences while Jade worked on alterations, and Vincent answered emails. Nina observed their growing friendship with knowing smiles. He's into you, she would whisper whenever Vincent left. Billionaires don't spend their afternoons watching someone sew unless they're interested. He's trying to become a better person, Jade would insist, though she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach when Vincent smiled at her, or the way their hands would brush accidentally, sending electricity up her arm. One evening, as Jade was closing the boutique, she found Vincent waiting outside. Rain had begun to fall, creating halos around the street lamps and turning the sidewalk into a mirror reflecting the city lights. "We're closed," Jade said, though her tone held no real dismissal. "I know," Vincent replied, stepping closer. The rain caught in his dark hair, and Jade noticed for the first time the whirring lines around his eyes, as if he carried burdens he never showed the world. "Jade, I need to tell you something, and I can't wait any longer." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" "These past few weeks, getting to know you, seeing how you build community through your work, how you treat everyone with equal respect regardless of their status. It's changed everything for me." Vincent's voice was raw with emotion. "You've changed everything for me, Vincent," Jade breathed, knowing what was coming, but not quite believing it. "I know this seems impossible," he continued. "We come from completely different worlds, but maybe that's exactly why this matters. You ground me. You remind me of what's important. And somewhere between that first argument and now, I've fallen in love with you." The question that changes everything. Jade stared at him, rain beginning to soak through her jacket. "You love me." "I love your courage, your integrity, your passion for making the world better through small, beautiful acts." Vincent moved closer, his eyes intense in the lamplight. "I love that you see the best in people while refusing to tolerate their worst behavior. I love that you challenged me to be better, and then believed I could actually change." "This is crazy," Jade whispered, though her heart was saying something entirely different. "The best things usually are," Vincent replied. "Jade Martinez, I'm not asking you to give up who you are or abandon your values. I'm asking you to let me support your dreams while you continue to challenge mine. I'm asking for the chance to prove that love can bridge any divide." Jade thought about the past weeks, about how Vincent had protected her business, how he had listened to her ideas about corporate sustainability and actually implemented changes in his company, how he had shown up consistently, not with grand gestures, but with genuine interest in her world. She thought about how her opinion of him had shifted from contempt to respect to something far more dangerous. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Yes, I'll take that chance." Vincent's smile was brilliant, unguarded in a way she had never seen. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her in the rain outside her boutique. And Jade realized that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the most unlikely first chapters. Building bridges 6 months after their rain-soaked kiss, Jade stood in the community center, where Vincent's foundation had just opened a new youth arts program. The space hummed with creative energy as teenagers worked on sewing machines Jade had helped select, learning sustainable fashion techniques while developing marketable skills. This was the third program they had launched together, blending Vincent's resources with Jade's expertise and passion. "Ms. Martinez, can you help me with this seam?" A 15-year-old girl, Riley, held up her project, a reconstructed denim jacket. She was embellishing with hand-embroidered flowers. Jade smiled, moving to Riley's workstation. "The trick is to keep your stitches small and even. Think of it like meditation. Each stitch is intentional." As she guided Riley's hands, Jade felt a profound sense of purpose. This was what she had always wanted, to share her grandmother's legacy, while empowering young people to see creativity as both art and opportunity. Vincent entered the center, carrying boxes of supplies. Having insisted on helping with the physical setup despite having a staff that could handle such tasks, he had changed in the months since their confrontation, softening in ways that surprised even Jade. He knew the names of every teenager in the program, remembered their projects, and spoke to them with genuine respect that came naturally now. The fabric shipment arrived, Vincent announced, setting down the boxes. "Riley, I grabbed those vintage buttons you wanted for your jacket," the supplier said. "They're from the 1960s. Riley's face lit up. "Mr. Blackwell, you remembered. Of course. Your design deserves authentic details." Vincent caught Jade's eye and winked, making her heart skip despite the months they had been together. The proposal that shook society at evening. Vincent had planned something special, though Jade didn't know it yet. They drove to the waterfront, where Vincent had arranged a private dinner at an overlook with panoramic views of the city skyline reflected in the bay. Candles flickered on a small table set for two, and soft music played from hidden speakers. "This is beautiful," Jade said, taking in the romantic setting. "What's the occasion?" "6 months ago, you called me out for being arrogant and cruel," Vincent began, taking her hands in his. "You saw the worst in me and demanded better. Since then, you've helped me discover the man I always should have been." Jade's eyes widened as Vincent slowly lowered himself to one knee, producing a velvet box from his jacket pocket. Inside, a stunning ring caught the candlelight, a vintage emerald surrounded by small diamonds in an Art Deco setting. "This ring belonged to my grandmother," Vincent said, his voice thick with emotion. "She immigrated here with nothing, just like yours did. She taught my grandfather that true wealth is measured in the lives you touch and the love you share." "Jade Martinez, you've touched my life in ways I never imagined possible. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that people can change? That love can transform even the most closed-off heart." Tears streamed down Jade's face as she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." As Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Jade marveled at the impossible journey that had brought them here. From enemies to friends to partners to this moment, where everything felt perfectly right despite all logic suggesting it shouldn't work. The wedding that united worlds, the wedding, held 4 months later, perfectly embodied their union of two worlds. Instead of a grand ballroom, they chose the community center, where they had launched their first youth program together. Jade wore a gown she had designed herself, created from vintage lace and sustainable fabrics, simple yet breathtaking. Vincent wore a classic suit, his boutonniere a single white rose that matched Jade's bouquet. The guest list reflected their merged lives. Nina served as maid of honor, beaming with pride for her best friend, Vincent's sister, whom he had reconnected with after Jade encouraged him to repair family relationships, stood beside her brother. The young people from their arts programs attended, dressed in outfits they had created themselves. Business executives sat next to community organizers. Jade's boutique regulars mingled with Vincent's corporate board members. Claire, the server from the gala, had been invited, and she stood in the front row, wearing a dress Jade had altered for her. She caught Jade's eye and mouthed a heartfelt thank you, her presence a powerful reminder of where this journey had begun. The ceremony was officiated by the community center director, a woman who had watched Jade and Vincent's partnership transform dozens of young lives. As Jade and Vincent exchanged vows that they had written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "Jade, you taught me that courage isn't about power or wealth," Vincent said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult or dangerous. You showed me that real strength lies in compassion, in using whatever privileges we have to lift others up. I promise to honor your values, to support your dreams, and to never forget the lesson you taught me that night at the gala." Jade's voice trembled as she spoke her vows. "Vincent, you've shown me that people can change. That transformation is possible when someone chooses growth over ego. You've taken the challenge I threw at you and turned it into something beautiful. I promise to continue challenging you, supporting you, and loving you as we build a life dedicated to making our community stronger and more just." When they kissed as husband and wife, the room erupted in applause and cheers that echoed off the community center walls. A joyful sound that represented far more than a wedding. It represented hope, transformation, and the power of two people from different worlds choosing to build something new together. The legacy continues a year into their marriage. Jade and Vincent had become powerful advocates for social responsibility in business. Vincent had restructured Blackwell Industries to prioritize ethical practices and community investment. 20% of his company's properties now housed affordable units, and every new development included community spaces for local businesses and arts programs. Threads of Hope had expanded into 3 locations, each staffed by graduates from their youth programs. Jade had launched a non-profit branch that provided free clothing alterations and job training for people transitioning out of homelessness. Vincent's foundation funded the operating costs, while Jade designed the curriculum and mentored participants personally. Their story had become somewhat legendary in the city. Local news had featured them multiple times, not as society gossip, but as examples of how privilege could be wielded responsibly. Universities invited them to speak about conscious capitalism and social entrepreneurship. Young activists and business students sought their mentorship, but the most meaningful impact happened in quiet moments, like when Riley, the teenager Jade had taught to sew, received a full scholarship to fashion design school through their foundation, or when Claire, the server from the gala, graduated from nursing school with honors, having been supported by the scholarship Vincent had created in her family's name. The full circle. In a crisp autumn evening, Jade and Vincent returned to the Grand Riverside Hotel for the annual Harbor Children's Foundation Gala, exactly 2 years after their infamous confrontation. This time, they entered together, hand in hand, and the atmosphere was entirely different. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell, the foundation director, greeted them warmly. "Thank you for your incredible generosity. Your donation this year will fund art therapy programs for 50 children." As they moved through the ballroom, people approached not with gossip or judgment, but with genuine respect. Several business leaders asked Vincent about implementing sustainable practices in their own companies. Fashion designers sought Jade's advice on ethical sourcing. Young professionals thanked them for inspiring a new approach to success, one that balanced profit with purpose. During dinner, Vincent leaned close to Jade and whispered, "Do you remember standing right over there, telling me I had no human decency?" Jade laughed softly. "I remember thinking I had just made a terrible mistake by embarrassing the most powerful man in the room. Best mistake either of us ever made," Vincent said, squeezing her hand. After dinner, Vincent surprised Jade by taking the microphone for an unscheduled speech. "2 years ago, in this very room, I was publicly called out for treating someone with cruelty and disrespect. The woman who confronted me is now my wife, and that moment changed my entire life." The room fell silent, every eye on Vincent. Jade Martinez saw me at my worst and demanded better. She didn't know who I was, didn't care about my net worth or influence. She just saw someone being cruel and decided to stop it. Vincent's voice grew passionate. "That kind of courage is what our community needs more of. Not politeness that enables bad behavior, but brave voices willing to speak truth to power." He turned to Jade, his eyes shining. "My wife taught me that real wealth is measured in lives changed, communities strengthened, and opportunities created. She showed me that being better isn't about grand gestures, but about treating every person with dignity every single day." Everything good in my life now stems from that moment when she refused to stay silent. The ballroom erupted in applause as Vincent returned to his seat. Jade wiped tears from her eyes, overwhelmed by how far they had come. Later, as they danced to the string quartet playing the same music that had provided the soundtrack to their first confrontation, Jade rested her head on Vincent's shoulder. "Are you happy?" she asked softly. Vincent pulled back to look at her, his expression more open and genuine than anyone who knew him 2 years ago would have believed possible. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be. You gave me something I didn't know I was missing." "What's that?" "Purpose, connection, a reason to be better than I was yesterday." Vincent kissed her forehead gently. "You gave me a life worth living, not just an empire worth running." As they swayed together in the same ballroom where they had first clashed, Jade reflected on the beautiful unpredictability of life. She had come to a charity gala, planning to support sick children, and instead had found her life's partner by picking a fight with a billionaire. Sometimes the most transformative love stories began with conflict, grew through challenge, and blossomed into something neither person could have created alone. Their story became a reminder to their community that change was always possible, that courage could transform not just individual lives, but entire systems of power. And it all started with one woman refusing to stay silent in the face of injustice, and one man choosing growth over pride when confronted with his failures. As the evening ended and they drove home through the city streets, past the community centers and youth programs they had built together, past Jade's boutiques employing dozens of graduates, past affordable housing developments with Vincent's name on them. They both knew their greatest adventure was still unfolding, because the most important part of their story wasn't how it began with a dramatic confrontation, but how it continued every single day with small acts of love, justice, and the unwavering commitment to leave their corner of the world better than they found it, together.